Today I'm going to talk about the specs and my thoughts on the sounds inside of the Pearl Mimic Pro drum module. What's up guys, Justin Greenwald here. Welcome to 65 Drums. This is the place to keep on top of all things e-drum related. Subscribe if that interests you. And let's get into the video. But wait, I have a disclaimer. This is not a review. This is me running down the specs of the drum module, and I'm going to try to surprise you with some stuff you may not know about this drum module. And secondly, this is me talking about the drum sounds that we've heard from all of the videos coming out of NAMM 2017. So let's get into the video. The Pearl Mimic Pro drum module is running Steven Slate Drums 5. This is as of yet unreleased drum software that is a step up from their previous version that they've sold and has been very popular. Steven Slate Drums actually developed Steven Slate Drums 5 on a different engine to work better with the Pearl Mimic Pro drum module, so it has an advantage over other third-party drum modules that will plug into a laptop and trigger it externally from the laptop. We don't know what kind of processor this thing is running off of, but we do know it has a 128 gigabyte solid state drive. That keeps the load times really low. You're only loading for about a second or two when you switch up kits. That's really fast. It's actually quicker than my laptop can do because I don't have a solid state drive in my laptop, so that's definitely an advantage. One of the biggest features of this drum module is that it works with nearly every drum pad made by everybody. All the zones of all of the pads. So you got your 4-zone Yamaha snares, all the zones work. It works great. You've got your roll and ride cymbals, works great. Alesis works great. There are a few exceptions, including the Roland digital snare and digital ride. I'll talk about that a little later on. I love this feature of the drum module. The only other module I know of that has this feature is the ATV 85 drum module. I'll leave a link in the description below if you want to check out that video. It's a really rare feature, and I wish every drum module could work with everything, but you know what? It's rare. You're getting 24-bit samples here. That's extremely heavy duty. I don't know of any drum software that goes any higher than that. And you got somewhere around 40 gigabytes of samples on this drive. That means there's a lot of empty storage space where you can import extra samples. I'll talk about that in a second. As far as the different kind of sounds you'll be getting, you're getting sampled toms ranging from 8 inches to 18 inches. You're getting around 20 to 25 kick drums, 20 to 25 different snares. We don't know how many cymbals will be inside of this drum module, but we do know you're getting Zildjian, Sabian, Paiste cymbals. Again, these samples are heavy duty. For example, your hi-hats, one hi-hat sound could have up to 2 to 3 gigabytes of sound files just for that one sound. Cymbals in general just take up a lot of storage space, as I mentioned in my previous video about the Alesis Strike. For some stupid reason in that video I said it's the high frequencies that take up the most storage space. That's not true. It's more about the sustain of the cymbal. When you hit a cymbal, it can ring for a solid minute or something like that. Meanwhile, a snare does not have anywhere near that long of a sustain. The shorter the recording, the smaller the file size. And I'm just happy that they're not going half-baked with these cymbals. They sound incredible. You get brown burr converters and you can layer different sounds. You can layer kick drum and snare sounds as of right now. Maybe later on down the line in a further software update you'll be able to layer the toms and stuff like that. But right now it's just kick and snare. You get 16 inputs and 16 outputs. The number of outputs is actually really impressive because the Roland TD50 only has, just so you know, the outputs are actually split in half here. So you get 8 individual outputs for individual ports, and then you have one other port, which is a DB25 connector, just like this. You'll have a connector on the back of the drum module you plug this kind of cable into, and then on the other end of the cable you have all of your 1/4-inch cables. So that will account for the other 8 direct outs, totaling 16. And of course, you can add inputs by chaining another module to this Pearl module. For every single input, you have a lot of options. You can change the attack, delay, sustain. You can change the release, the EQ, the compressor, reverb, tuning, panning, volume. You can do all of that for every single input. And that's not also accounting for the individual mic options you have. So, of course, each instrument has its own mic. You got overhead mics, you got the mics for the drums. For the snare, you have a mic on top of the snare, a mic for the bottom of the snare, just a lot of different options. It's just the audio engineer's dream. You can really dial everything in. Again, this is all being done on your touchscreen interface. So you're going to be changing the levels with your finger. You're going to be dragging and dropping different drums and cymbals to create your drum set. I think it's going to be kind of fun to just edit on this drum module. One of the most unique things I've learned about this drum module is that you can draw the velocity curve with your finger. Another favorite feature of mine is the fact that you can have a separate mix for your headphones and for the direct outs. And I believe you can put effects on those separately from each other. This is perfect for me because I like to have extra cymbal volume in my personal mix. Meanwhile, I know the audience needs to hear more kick and snare, so I can give the sound man what he needs, and then I can also keep the mix the way I want to hear it. Everyone is happy. You can also fly in samples from USB or the integrated SD card slot. That's great. Right now they're only one-shot samples, AIFF, and WAV files, but rumor has it they're working on a multi-layer editor, so you'll eventually be able to fly in a whole VST, such as Superior Drummer or Easy Drummer. I think 99% of everybody will be happy with the sounds inside of Steven Slate Drums 5. There's going to be 60 really nice drum sets, but maybe if they release a software update after launch where you can allow multi-layered sample imports, you can bring in your favorite drum set from Easy Drummer or Superior Drummer. That would be kind of cool. All of the zones are assignable. This may not seem like a big deal, but it's just a great thing to have. There are some drum companies out there, Roland, that have decided in their infinite wisdom that they will not allow you to split the rim zone from the drum head zone. Obviously on the Roland TD30 and the Roland TD50, you can assign separate sounds to separate zones, but on some of their lower end drum modules, they have taken away that capability, and I don't really understand why. A couple of other features in this drum module are that it has a song player inside of it, a stereo recorder, it's got MIDI in and out. That's getting a little bit rarer these days. You also have, of course, your aux input, your headphone jack, and you're running off of a 12-volt power supply. The release date is known to be somewhere around March. There's no firm exact day when it will be in stores, so we're just hoping it happens sooner than later. So I'm going to talk about a handful of things I love about this drum module and a handful of things I don't like about this drum module. First off, I love the sounds. The cymbal sounds especially just are incredible. They're some of the best cymbal sounds I've ever heard on any drum software or any drum module I've ever played. The tom sounds, some of them are really amazing too. Snare sounds are good, kick sounds are good. All the sounds are just great. Now, of course, we haven't heard all of the 60 kits inside of this drum module, but you know what? The company always has to play the best 5 kits at any sort of trade show. So of course you're going to hear the best of the best at those kinds of trade shows and the videos they release on YouTube. But I'm really happy with what I'm hearing. Another thing I love is the fact that you're actually playing a VST. A lot of drummers have been asking for this for ages. We just wanted a drum company to just stop trying to sample all their own sounds and just go partner with TuneTrack or Steven Slate or somebody and just have them bring their entire drum library and just plop it in the drum module. And now we have what we've been asking for. I love the fact that you have a giant touchscreen display. All these dot matrix screens that like Roland and other drum companies use, I think we can afford to have a nice touchscreen on a $2,000 drum module, and finally we're getting that. And of course you got that multi-purpose knob because I do not want to go totally touchscreen. You got to have at least something not touchscreen. I also love the fact that they tell you what individual drums you're playing. They tell you you're playing an 18-inch Zildjian ride. You're playing a 10-inch like pearl snare, that type of a thing. I know it's all psychological, but for me it adds to the experience to know exactly what drum they're emulating or what drum they've recorded in this case. Now let me talk about a couple of things that I wish were there or I'm not happy about. And obviously there's not much to talk about here because they've gotten so many things right. It's almost like nitpicking to talk about some of these things. But first off, I wish the headphone jack wasn't on the back of the drum module. Most drum companies, they just have the headphone jack on the front of the drum module. At least my Roland TD30 does. When it's on the back of the drum module and the cable has to run underneath the drum module, that means the cable is going to be like this for like, years of playing. And I don't like that. I love touchscreens, but I wish there were a couple of extra dedicated knobs. That way you could have a dedicated knob for headphone volume, a dedicated knob for master volume, a dedicated knob for mix-in volume. So when you plug in your cell phone, you just want to play along to some songs. I once used a drum module that didn't have those dedicated drum volume knobs. It was the ATV 85. And I really missed the fact that I couldn't individually have just predestined knobs that did exactly one thing. Obviously, the multi-purpose knob will be able to change headphone volume. It'll be able to change master volume and aux volume. I think it just saves a step by having dedicated volume knobs. Also, one other knob I wish was there would be a tuning knob. So if I hit the snare, I can reach over to the tuning knob and change the tuning of the snare without having to go into a different menu. I also noticed there's no dedicated foot switch input on the back of the drum module, like my Roland TD30 has and the Roland TD50 has. A foot switch input lets you plug this, or something like this, into the back of your drum module, and when you click one of the buttons, you can advance a kit or go back a kit, or take off the snare strainer, or put on the snare strainer, or open your hi-hats or close the hi-hats. I like the flexibility of having a foot controller. This is kind of a non-issue because with a really simple software update, they could make it so you can assign any of those 16 direct outs to become a foot switch. And yeah, it can be really easily fixed, or maybe it is a feature and I just don't know about it. Obviously, the drum module hasn't come out yet, so we don't know everything yet. There's only two other things I can think of. First off, I wish there were XLR outputs on the back of this thing so you didn't have to carry around a direct box. That just makes life a little bit more simple. The Roland TD50 has that. And secondly, the price. The price could be lowered a little bit. I think at $2,000 would have been a better deal, or $1,800 would have been a better deal. Because you could buy a copy of Steven Slate Drums 5 when it gets released. If it's around $400, you could buy a copy of Steven Slate Drums and a gaming laptop and still have money to spare before you get to the price of this drum module. We all complain about how expensive Roland products are. If we have to be fair and balanced, that means we have to equally say the Pearl Mimic drum module costs too much. But you know what? When you have the best drum module in the world, you can charge whatever you want because you're the best. I want to talk a second about the competition this drum module has. First off, I want to say, when I made that Strike video, people were saying how the Strike module didn't sound anywhere near as good as the Pearl Mimic drum module. And of course it doesn't. I have no idea why anyone's comparing the Pearl drum module to the Strike drum module when they're at completely different price categories. For example, you could buy an entire Alesis Strike drum set and still have money to spare over the cost of the Pearl Mimic Pro. So that means the Alesis Strike drum module is probably only going to cost like, $800, $1,000. It's going to be less than half the price of the Pearl Mimic drum module. The only other drum module in the Mimic's price bracket is the Roland TD50. So that's the module you have to compare this to. Obviously, some guy is going to go out and buy a Roland TD50 sound module and a Pearl Mimic drum module, and he's going to put up head-to-head comparisons of all the features and all of everything. And I'm still waiting for that video to come out, but I think we're going to find out pretty quickly that the Pearl Mimic drum module is the better drum module. I have to be careful here because I can't really make blanket statements like that without saying we don't know how well this thing will work in the real world. We do know that Roland has decades and decades of making flagship electronic drum modules that are just great. And every single time they come out with a new one, it's refined just even more than the previous one. Meanwhile, this is the first drum module they made in quite a while, and they never made a drum module at this caliber before. So there might be some rough spots. They might have to put out a software update here and there to get things working more smoothly. We have no idea. We'll have to see how these two go head to head. I personally think the Pearl Mimic drum module will be the clear winner. When we look back in a couple of years, the Pearl Mimic drum module will be the clear winner. And a lot of people are already saying that it's the better sound quality wise. I want to point out something that I think is a little bit interesting. Roland has found a way to get people locked down into using the Roland TD50 drum module. Because if you go buy a Roland TD50 KV, your brand new ride cymbal and your brand new snare are using digital USB connections. They won't work with the Pearl module even if you wanted them to. So if you want to use the Pearl module, you got to chain the two modules together. I just find it interesting that the most advanced sound module in the world, the Mimic drum module, won't be compatible with the most advanced snare and the most advanced ride cymbal pads on the market. Why do I say they're the most advanced snare and ride cymbal pads? It's because no one has really tried what they're doing here. Roland is using 3 separate piezos in a triangle formation on the 14-inch snare so that it avoids hot spotting. It also can sense the static electricity in your hand, you can silence the ride cymbal by just laying your hand on top of the ride cymbal. These two pads have more sensors jam-packed in them than some entire low-end electronic drum sets. I just find it funny that the world's most advanced drum pads aren't compatible with the world's most advanced drum module. Roland is starting to make their own ecosystem, their own walled garden, kind of like what Apple does, where they have their own cables and they don't work with other third parties and stuff like that. It almost looks like Roland is starting to inch towards that idea. Anyway, I'm rambling. Thank you so much for watching. I'm making 3 new videos a week right now. Subscribe if you want to keep on top of those. I got my news on my Facebook page. All of my drum covers are on Instagram. See you guys in a few days. Some years, nothing happens in the e-drum industry, and then some years, everything happens. 2017 is going to be an interesting year. You got Alesis going to dominate the $2,000 price point. You've got Roland coming out with some really innovative drum pads, and you've got the Pearl Mimic Pro coming out with a drum module that is more advanced than anything we've ever seen. So a lot of great things are happening. I think the final frontier is probably going to be the low-end market. We need to see better $500 drum sets because that's what the majority of drummers will play. That's what the majority of acoustic drummers will see and associate in their minds with electronic drums. So I wish electronic drum manufacturers would spend more time trying to make better lower-end drum sets. But that's not where the money is apparently, and they're working more on their flagships right now.